a scenario that at the time was very difficult or a struggle for you that ended up turning into a positive outcome? What was it like going through that time in your life?
Okay. In terms of the business, I would imagine, right?
I think it could be personal, but I guess we could do business.
Well, okay, I have a story from EZ Texting that I can tell you that was like probably my worst nightmare. And that worst nightmare ended up coming to save me in another nightmare situation that came up years later.
Okay.
It's kind of convoluted, but a couple of years into EZ Texting, I get a lawsuit. I was served with a lawsuit, and it was a class action lawsuit. And I don't know if you ever heard of a class action. I didn't know what a class action was until this, but a class action lawsuit is one serious damn lawsuit. I can tell you that, right? It's like they only do really big companies. Usually, like you hear class action lawsuits against Johnson & Johnson and stuff like that, right? Like, so it's a class action lawsuit where they named us and a couple of our clients that used our system, and they alleged that the people who received these text messages didn't consent to it. They didn't opt in, okay? And you'd be thinking, well, like, why are they suing EZ Texting? We're just a platform, right? Like, you come in, you craft your own message, you put your own list in. But there's this specific act called the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which is a federal statute, and it protects people from basically, getting spam calls, right? It's and it's what the FCC uses to enforce, people not spam calling you. And there's a lot of let's say penalties or fees that you have to pay when you break this law, right? And so, they were looking for like, I don't know, $50 million in damages or some crazy amount, right? And then not only did we get one of them, but we got a couple of these, right? And in a few months thing. And as you can imagine, I'd never dealt with this before, and I have to get a lawyer. Lawyers cost, at least good lawyers, cost tons of money, especially litigating lawyers that know how to deal with this type of thing, right? And it was like, if I lose, right, like everything's gone, right? Like, I don't have enough money to pay this stuff, right? It was like death. It was a death sentence, basically. And it was many nights of sleeplessness. It was many nights of kind of researching and figuring out what I could do. But to make a long story short, essentially, I ended up having to figure out that I needed to go to Washington, D.C., have a meeting with the FCC, and pay someone who can help me do that, right? And I've never done anything like this before. You have to understand, right? Like, this isn't like, I didn't know what FCC matters are or whatever. And I did something called a petition for declaratory ruling, because the law gives fax broadcasters an exemption, like eFax and those other types of companies. Somehow they got an exemption in the law because it doesn't make any sense. If someone uses your service to send out spam, you're not responsible for them. Just like if you take your cell phone and you send out spam, they're not going to sue AT&T and be like, AT&T, why'd you let them send spam, right?
I see,
right?
Okay.
So anyway, I ended up figuring this out, and after years and a lot of money spent and a lot of sleepless nights and probably stress that I will never recover from, I figured this out, and I was able to kind of get us decoupled from these class action lawsuits and save the business, right? Even though it quite literally, almost just the legal bills quite literally bankrupted me. But in any case, what ended up happening is years later, T-Mobile decided that they didn't like what we were doing because we had a medical marijuana dispensary using our text messaging service, and they didn't like, I guess, some sort of internal politics at T-Mobile, something crazy like that, didn't like the legalization of marijuana. And so they started blocking text messages to T-Mobile users from our service. Now, that doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but imagine if I sold you a cell phone again and told you, hey, you can use this cell phone to call everyone but T-Mobile people, right? You would never buy that cell phone, right?
Right.
Or T-Mobile people can't call you either, right? Like, it's just an incomplete service. It doesn't make any sense. It's one of the 4 biggest carriers, right? And so I was, they were not cooperating. They were not listening. And so it was a David and Goliath situation. And what happened is that something in the law, in the law that of the initial lawsuits from the previous lawsuits that I had gone through, there was the class action lawsuits, ended up becoming the basis of the lawsuit that I put against T-Mobile, and ultimately they settled really quickly. So one thing that went bad years ago set up the stage to help me in another situation later. And it's kind of roundabout, and I'm trying not to be so technical because it's kind of esoteric stuff, but that's what I'm glad that shit happened to me a long time ago, and it was horrible, and it was a really bad situation that I was in. But if I hadn't gone through that, I would have probably never been able to overcome the next lawsuit, essentially.
Fantastic. Love it. Very good.